Hey, it's Mailbag Wednesday. I asked White Sox fans how are they feeling about this upcoming season, and they definitely let me hear it. Lots of mixed feelings and some optimism thrown in there, but most of the feedback had a negative connotation, coupled with a sense of indifference. With just days remaining until pitchers and catchers report, what are the big storylines to look for in Arizona, and MLB goes into detail on the new rule changes for this upcoming season.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Hey, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon today to get started. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Hey, really appreciate you letting me steal some of your time to talk off-season White Sox. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We got pitch clock, larger bases, and the shift will be banned starting in spring training. How will these changes affect the White Sox? Can Pedro Grifol accomplish what we are all banking on? Getting the White Sox to bounce back in 2023. And I open up the mailbag and take a look at how White Sox fans are feeling about this upcoming season. Hey, welcome back to Locked On White Sox. Look for one more episode this week. On Thursday, we'll be back up to 5 episodes once spring training gets underway. Appreciate you passing this podcast along to other White Sox fans in your life. It is Mailbag Wednesday, and this is a bit of a continuation from the previous episode when we started talking about, everybody's feelings about this upcoming season. It's already started to, I think, rise up. These episodes have been a bit therapeutic with spring training, very close, about a week away or so. Games going to be starting on February 25th. It's happening, folks, and a lot of feelings are starting to spill out as we're realizing the off season is just about over, and a lot of the things that we were hoping for weren't accomplished. So I opened up this question on Twitter yesterday, and boy, I got a ton of responses from folks. And the question was pretty simple. With about 50 days remaining until the opener in Houston, how are you feeling about the upcoming season? And we talked a little bit about it in the previous episode, but we've got some specific comments that I'd love to respond to. Now, lots of comments, on Jimenez and Robert, which I like to think are the thunder and lightning of this White Sox roster. We're going to talk a little bit more about team leader or leaders later in this episode and what Grifol wants to do and what maybe, what I think they should do. Is Tim Anderson really going to be the leader? Does he want to step up? And I think the team really is going to go the way Jimenez and Robert go. If they can stay healthy, and that's the big if. Everybody's talking about it. Every article you read about White Sox having a possible bounce back year, it's Jimenez and Robert and Jimenez. Can they stay healthy? Can they finally live up to, their potential? And so a lot of comments revolving around those two players. And so here's one that I found really interesting, and I get it. I absolutely get this comment, and I appreciate it. This was the comment I received about how are you feeling about this upcoming season, and I continue to be a Sox fan and hope for their success, but I will no longer invest my time or money in any deep way to this organization. The last 2 years have found me reflecting on how unfulfilled 50 years of fandom have felt. And boy, the lack of investment has been a common theme, not just time, but monetarily. Am I gonna make White Sox games appointment TV? I think that's a lot of fans are wondering. And from what I have received, the feedback, it's no. This is not going to be appointment TV. Maybe at the beginning of the season, we'll see how this thing goes. But summer will take its course, and people will live their lives. And in a lot of people's minds, this is the impression I'm getting. This Sox team will not be relevant by the trade deadline. The Sox will be, third, fourth place in the AL Central. I'm not going to waste my time anymore. That's some people are feeling that way. And this particular fan that, responded on Twitter, I understand it completely. I mean, the investment of time and money, did you buy tickets? If you have a season ticket package, 20, 40 games, did you buy more? Are there certain games, if you don't have a season ticket package, were there certain games that you went after? Or you waiting maybe in the secondary market? You waiting for prices to go down? There's no real urgency right now. I think opening day is always that opening weekend maybe is always a big deal. And, weather permitting, of course, the home opener usually pretty well attended. The Giants are in town. It's a Monday. It's a 3:00 game. So I could see that. But maybe you didn't invest in anything beyond that. For me, the Sox are the only South Side Major League Baseball team. That's where I'm coming from. There is no Oak Lawn White Sox or Tinley Park White Sox that I can gravitate to. I mean, Jerry Reinsdorf owns this team right now, and that's what I have to deal with. The White Sox, for me, are a connection to my past. Maybe you feel the same way. I'm a fourth-generation Chicago White Sox fan. The Sox are, a relationship conduit, to other friends and family that I have. It's not just quitting the White Sox. It's changing my complete identity and separating myself from family and friends. So, a lot of people will say, hey, why don't you just stop giving money to this organization? Stop investing your time. I wish I could. And that's a me problem. I can't do it. I've too much invested, and, I'm still going to be a fan, but, I do question though, how much more I will invest than I already do. That's something I'm struggling with because of what I've seen these last few off seasons. Very disappointing. So I don't know, going above and beyond out of excitement. It's just not there right now. But there's no question I will continue to be a fan. So appreciate that response. Here's another one. Fan said, hey, I'm kind of lost. Just don't have a great feeling. And normally I'm anything could happen fan, but not so much right now. And I totally respect that. Feeling kind of lost, I think it's a good way of describing it. I can relate. How did we get here? We were promised, and promised maybe isn't a good word, because there's no guarantee. But you felt almost like this was kind of going to be a sure thing. We were going to be winning divisions, back to back. We'd be going to the ALCS. We might have already have seen a World Series appearance by now. We were going to be going after top free agents, premium players, and the feeling of uncertainty at this point. Could this year really be just the same from last year? I personally don't think that way. I think this team is going to be, more than just 2 or 3 games better, but and anything could happen. This particular fan is like, I don't know if I'm at that stage right now. I don't know if I can even say that. And I get it. Another fan reached out on Twitter and responded with, look, I'm excited. I love White Sox baseball. I get excited every year. I think it's my optimism speaking, and I can also relate to that. I'm hearing that a little bit as well. There is some optimism out there, and there should be. I understand why. We've talked about on this podcast the different paths to optimism if all these players, hit their potential and not having like unbelievably career years, but just coming back to normalcy. I think the Sox are going to be a successful team. Now, I tend to be a fan with my heart, not necessarily my head. If I could go back and review some of the conversations I had in 2018, 2019, I had the Sox maybe making a run at the playoffs. Okay, that's insane. But I was a fan with my heart, not really, the metrics with my head. So the stranger things can happen approach, you never know. I get that. And I want to be positive and I want to be optimistic, but I think I'm struggling with the fact that hey, anything can happen. That's what the front office, the White Sox front office, have used now. People can stay healthy, people can return to the back of their baseball cards. That shouldn't be the strategy, though. That's solely based on that hope, and I think that's what's eating at me. However, I am still optimistic about this team right now. Another fan said, hey, this is the least excited I felt in years. I don't expect them to be better than 500 in 2023. I hope I'm wrong. And I wonder how, I don't know, we won't probably get the specific numbers, but I wonder how ticket sales have gone so far. The least excited in years. That has been a common theme. When I read through all these replies, when I put that statement out in Twitter, a lot of folks are like, I could take it or leave it. I'll watch, but again, I'm not going to, it's not going to be appointment TV. I'm going to live my life. It's not going to revolve around the White Sox schedule. If I'm home or if I'm, in the car, I'll listen, I'll follow up, but I'm not going to be any more invested than I typically am. So, look, no wrong answers, of course. Absolutely not. My, fandom is going to be different from your fandom and the other way around. That is completely okay, of course. I do appreciate the feedback. Really interesting to go through these replies on how everybody is feeling. And I did get a sense, if I were to ballpark it, I would say most of the replies had that downer, that negative feel to it. Now, if you are a subscriber to The Athletic, you probably got asked to fill out a survey recently. I did go through that and I filled that out. The results just came back. James Fegan had an article going into detail on all the results. And boy, there were some eye-opening numbers on how people are feeling about this White Sox team. So do yourself a favor if you haven't already, or maybe you don't. Maybe you don't have the stomach for it. Go through those survey results. Very eye-opening. Would it be better if there was one clear leader in the clubhouse, if Pedro Grifol called out one player to step up? I'm going to tell you why leadership might be a collective effort this season. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get to get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. I think the over-under for the Super Bowl right now is 50.5. And this is an interesting kind of prop bet in a way. Any player, it's not a prop bet, but it feels like it. Any player passing over 505.5 yards, that's a plus 8,000. That would be a Super Bowl record. So check that out. The FanDuel Sports app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Maybe you saw Scott Merkin's recent little article on White Sox .com. I received it in his newsletter in my email, and he had some storylines that he was focusing on that I thought were pretty interesting, with some quotes and some reasoning behind it. 3 storylines specifically here as spring training is on its way. One of the storylines was Pedro Grifol at the helm, and this is what Pedro Grifol had to say about his first time as a manager here. Obviously, managing is different than the bench coach. As a bench coach, you are leading people, but somebody else is leading you. Here, I'm leading people. But I love to delegate. I love to watch people work. I love to watch people lead. I think about February 14th and the 15th, and it's really no different other than I'm going to stand in front of the team and share our expectations with them and go out there and execute. That's really what it's about. Again, I've been happy with what Pedro Grifol has been saying ever since, his initial press conference. I thought he won the press conference. He's got the resume. A little disappointed that the White Sox went with someone that did not have a prior MLB head coach experience, and I wish it came from a more successful organization. But I'm sold on everything that Grifol is saying, and it is going to be different. I can imagine, sitting back, but he's surrounding himself by people that he trusts. I believe it sounds like communication is an all-time high so far. A lot of healthy conversations, and it's all about that language. Making sure players understand where you're coming from. I love how he said expectations, and I hopefully those are set early, and there's some accountability. I think that's the other big thing. What's going to happen if players aren't living up to that promise, to what was talked about in Glendale, Arizona, as the season unfolds? How will Pedro Grifol, get the ship right, so to speak, if things go, in a different direction off course? So that's a good storyline, watching Pedro Grifol, what he has to say, how he attack some of these, the second base competition, the right field competition, how he's using guys, and how the Sox play, how they really try to exploit another team's weakness. We probably won't see some of that, until the actual season gets going. But the Pedro Grifol at the helm is a good storyline. Merkin also said, will Colas be the right man for right field? Everybody's asking that. And this is what Chris Getz had to say. He's a guy who has really good hands at the plate, certainly has power, has a good arm. He loves to compete and plays passionately. He has a chance to be an impactful major league player. There's a real aggressiveness to how he plays the game. He has the ability to make adjustments at the plate just because of how talented his hands are. And I feel like he really has a chance to help our major league club soon. So you can go and, you could dissect that quote there. The aggressiveness, that worries me a little bit. Some of our players, we've seen it from Moncada every now and then. Robert Moore and Jimenez. Abreu got into some patterns over the last season or so, swinging at pitches that they had no business swinging at. The lack of discipline. So I appreciate the aggressiveness, and maybe I'm reading into it a little too much, but it's the discipline that I'm looking forward to seeing from Colas, and how he handles himself with major league pitching. And, Getz saying he has a chance to help out our major league clubs soon. He's obviously carefully crafting that quote, that comment. He's going to have an opportunity to earn that right field spot, but I don't think anybody wants to assign it to him right now. Again, he didn't have a lot of time in AAA, so this will be an interesting spring training for him, to say the least. This was from MLB Trade Rumors very recently, an article regarding the White Sox right field situation. And this is from the article. Though the White Sox seem capable of having a better outfield this year, the overall depth does seem to be lacking at the moment. If Colas comes into spring and looks great, then things are probably in good shape. But if he looks a little shaky and goes back to the minors, then Sheets and Jimenez are likely handling things, with both of those guys being defensive liabilities. One injury would suddenly vault Garcia or one of the non-roster guys into an everyday role. More than one injury would really create a problem. So depth has been an issue with this White Sox club for a while. And, it's on the White Sox organization, the front office. They refuse to get, a proven veteran right fielder. That's why we have this situation. That's why you've got Eloy Jimenez going out there to the media a couple weeks ago saying, hey, look, I want to play right field. I just don't want to be a DH. And hopefully that's not the case, but I appreciate, his passion that he's saying it. There was a website, a Twitter account, MLB Metrics, that came out with a list of top designated hitters in all of baseball, American League National. And they put Eloy Jimenez at the 3 spot for designated hitters. So again, don't tell Eloy Jimenez that right now, unless Pedro Grifol and the front office got to him already and said, look, I appreciate your media moment, but no. You are our designated hitter. Pretty cool that MLB Metrics already put him in the 3 spot in all of baseball. And, again, I think it's people realizing his potential. Look, if you could stay healthy, look what you can do. If you want to help this club, it's through the designated hitter spot. In the third storyline that Merkin laid out was collective bounce back. And that's what everybody is talking about. And Grifol with that quote, that blurb, there are a lot of guys with a chip on their shoulder. And, there's been tons written about the White Sox with a negative tone this offseason, even going back to the end of last season, things coming out of, from Cleveland after Cleveland stormed through Sox Park and took care of business on their way to winning the division, and what they had to say about the White Sox. Is it bulletin board material? Do you believe in that type of stuff? Do you need that to motivate you? As my co-host on Good Guys Talk Back, Pat Hester, would say, it's like whatever you can use, and it's different for every player, I would imagine, use that. If you got a chip on your shoulder, if you feel like you were left off on certain lists, Dylan Cease not being mentioned as one of the top starting pitchers by MLB, they came out with that list. Use that. Absolutely use it. Have a unified sense as a team. And maybe it's something that they talk about in spring training. Maybe Grifol says, look, this is what's been said about you as a team and how last year went. Are you ready to prove these folks wrong? We've talked about it. Now we have to put it into action. The White Sox and the rest of MLB will start getting used to the new rules very soon. What are the specifics? And how will they affect the White Sox? More on that in a moment. So you got new rules, the major new rules. It's the pitch timer, pitch clock. You've got the larger bases, and of course the banning the shift. We had a listener last week for the mailbag, Amber. She asked a little bit about some of these new rules, and so this is a bit of a follow-up from last week. MLB came out with an article about specifics in terms of these different rules. So pitch timer, the length of games will be determined by innings, not minutes, but to create a crisper pace, there will be a 30-second timer between batters and then a shorter time limit between pitches. Pitchers will be required to begin their motion 15 seconds after receiving the ball with the bases empty, or 20 seconds after receiving the ball with runners on base. If they don't, they will be charged with an automatic ball. Batters, meanwhile, must be in the batter's box and alert to the pitcher by the 8-second mark on the clock, or else be charged with an automatic strike. So, we've got hitters and pitchers that are going to have to adjust to this. Guys like Dylan Cease, they could be kind of slow to the mound, to the plate, I should say. Maybe both. Cease, taking the hat off, going to the hair, kind of walking around, cerebral almost. Where Johnny Cueto, which we don't have anymore, he was really quick. Grab that ball. I'm going to get into my routine, which is different. I felt like every pitch was different to the hitter. So this is going to be an adjustment, and for hitters, adjusting the batting glove and all these other different, things that hitters go into to get in a routine. That's going to change. Matt Carpenter weighed in. He had a sense of this from playing in the minors last year. Matt Carpenter said, initially, I hated the pitch timer. He spent some time in AAA in 2022 playing with the pitch timer. I grew into liking it a lot to the point where I would fully endorse it in the major league game. The big selling point is that the pace of the game is way better. And then you got the shift restrictions. A lot of questions on this. So can infielders switch sides? So MLB said no. So if the shortstop is the team's best defender, he cannot switch spots with the second baseman against a batter more likely to hit the ball to that side of second base. Can an outfielder play in the infield as a fifth defender? Yes, a team can take a bigger risk of the batter hitting the ball the other way to a more open expanse in the outfield. Interesting. What is the penalty for failure to comply with the shift restrictions? It's an automatic ball. Are shift restrictions subject to replay review? They are. And again, this is all going to be in play in spring training. So umpires can get used to this, as well as, of course, players and managers and coaches. Can an infielder circumvent the rule by running across second base or into the outfield when the pitch is released? This is a question I've talked to so many people about, and I'm glad we've got like a final answer on it. No, you cannot do that. In addition to being physically difficult, such circumvention will be monitored by the umpires as a violation, resulting in an automatic ball. And then the third big rule change is the bigger bases, going from 15 inches on each side to 18 inches on each side, while home plate remains unchanged. The primary reason why the bases are bigger is safety, giving fielders and runners more room to operate without colliding. Again, these will all be used during spring training. I mean, this is going to change. It's going to force infielders to speed up for sure. You're going to see a lot of bobbled baseballs. Will you see bunting? Well, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to force, an infielder's hand to try to hurry up a little bit. Maybe some of your speedsters will. How many times have you seen, players trying to stretch out an infield single and, tearing or ripping a hamstring? We've seen that quite a bit. So all being tested here in spring training. I think the Sox, again, this is a philosophy, right? How Pedro Grifol uses certain guys, Robert with his speed, if Billy Hamilton can make the club, that's a guy, but do you want to test it? I think it's going to be, on a situation basis, but it'll be interesting how Pedro Grifol says, you know what, we can use this to our advantage, and how we approach the game. So look for that this spring training. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts. We are on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and get your questions in for next week's mailbag at lockedonsox@gmail.com. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. I'll make your second listen. Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, I'll be continuing to look at off-season scenarios and how they will impact the White Sox in 2023 as we inch closer to spring training. Appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.